All right, 19 minutes. This one totally deserves it. The status of different wives in polygynous families. The women in a polygynous family are often spoke of in reports as concubines, with the exception of the one first married. Actually, the distinction between wives and concubines belongs in general to advanced stages of society, although some warlike tribes draw a distinction between captured female slaves and wives of their own nation. In such uncultured societies, one wife, not invariably the one first married, is referred to as chief wife. It has been suggested that in such cases, the chief wife is in reality the only real wife, and that the others are little better than concubines, thus implying that such marriages, although in appearance polygamous, are theoretically monogamous. But it can be shown that development has commonly taken place in the opposite direction. Where the wives are sisters, the eldest sister naturally exercises over the younger ones a certain authority and enjoys a certain precedence, which would be the same whether they were married or not. And an older woman usually has the privileges of seniority, but these distinctions are different from that between the chief wife and the other wives, which is found in some societies in which observers are prone to detect in uncultured peoples, among whom it is very rare. Reliable reports from all over the world stress the complete equality of wives. The wife who is spoken of as the chief wife is very frequently merely the favorite for the time being, and very often the last married. Thus, among the Sioux, the oldest wife, being generally the eldest sister, enjoyed a certain precedence, but the one who was the last married had an equal status. Among the Chukchi and the Aleut Tatars, an old wife is deposed and becomes the servant of the younger ones or is driven from the home. Distinctions between the various wives are found chiefly in Africa and Asia. Nevertheless, wives are on the same footing among the Central African Pygmies, the Congo tribes in Angola and Abyssinia, among the Banaka and the Bafuku of the Cameroons, etc. In Africa, the term chief wife commonly refers to the distribution of agricultural duties among the wives. A chief wife is needed to direct the work of the others like a foreman. In Senegambia, if the chief wife proves incompetent, her position is given to another wife. Among the tribes of British Central Africa, a man may change his chief wife whenever he thinks fit. Frequently, when a man possesses extensive fields, he has to appoint several chief wives. Among the Medj, when a man's wives become too numerous to live in one hut, he divides his establishment, appointing a chief wife for each group. Such practices are scarcely indicative of monogamy. In certain advanced social conditions, however, the distinctions between a chief wife and the other wives may have a real juridic significance, and one which has an important bearing upon the development of monogamic institutions. A woman of higher social rank naturally enjoys a superior status. Such status is independent of whether she has been married before or after other wives and of the husband's predilections. Among the Binjalsa of Bengal, a man is bound to take a new wife when he succeeds to the rank of zemindar, or landowner. Even though he is already married, the new wife is the patrami, or principal wife. The social rank of a man's first wife, who is usually selected for him by his relatives, is regarded as of the highest importance. It is obvious that the trouble and expense of securing a wife of suitable social qualifications can rarely be undertaken more than once. Hence, it is a general rule that such social and mercenary conditions are taken into account to regard to a man's first wife only. These requirements, once satisfied, a man must, as a rule, be content to select his subsequent wives by less reputable considerations, such as love, youth, beauty, and industry. The position of a man's first wife is thus often quite apart from any relative status bestowed upon her by her marriage, socially superior to that of his subsequent acquisitions. These considerations acquire an enormously enhanced importance when in many advanced societies and in early patriarchal societies, the paramount consideration comes to be the breeding of legitimate heirs. Here's where it gets interesting. A legitimate wife is primarily a wife who can give birth to a legitimate heir. It is the legitimacy of the heir which makes the wife legitimate. A wife who is barren is not regarded as legitimate and can in all lower cultures be divorced. Sometimes, as for instance among the Maori, when no distinction of social rank exists between wives, the chief wife is she who first gives birth to an heir. Where primitive tribal organization is still strong but is passing from a matriarchal to a patriarchal order, a legitimate child means a child which belongs to his father's and not his mother's clan. The breeding of illegitimate children, in this sense, defeats the main objective of procreation, the increase of the tribe and its perpetuation. The breeding of such illegitimate children is consequently as great an offense against patriarchal society as transference of women to another tribe is against matriarchal society. So that's the matrilocal lineage thing. And that Yaakov had to work for his two wives. And then when he takes his two wives out of that family, his own family is disturbed by this because they think it could cause a war, because you never take wives from their household unless you want to cause a war. Until you become a pastoral advanced society. All right. Islam condemned the once common free contract between a man and woman known as al-mota because it gave the man no offspring that could be reckoned to his tribe and not to the tribe of the mother. Let's see, what you got to? Okay. One of the merits of polygyny in the eyes of uncultured peoples is that it increases the number of a man's progeny, but where the transmission of private property becomes an important consideration, it is inconvenient to have numerous heirs, and the bulk of the property, or the whole, is sometimes transmitted to the children of the chief wife only. All right. Now, this is where he drops the weight. In such conditions, and they are the conditions of settled agricultural society, what is desirable is not a large progeny, but an heir. And what is required is not a large number of legitimate wives, but one legitimate wife. That other wives should be legitimate is not only of no importance, but is positively undesirable. Obviously, the distinction in rank between the mother of the legitimate heir and the other wives must become more sharply pronounced as private property grows more important. This differentiation will be accentuated by the reluctance of self-respecting families to allow their daughters to occupy an ever more disreputable and illegitimate position. So, the illegitimate children are love children, children of the beautiful young wife. So it's the hard-working good girl who had the legitimate heir. And then the later second, third, and fourth wives married out of some kind of romantic sentiment that had the illegitimate children. So anybody who's aware of like sort of old American cinema and stuff, there's probably some of this that you're going, wait a second. I bet Jim is probably going, wait a second. This reminds me of some story I've heard before or seen a movie of or something. So, in settled civilized society, the wife thus acquires an entirely new function. Whereas among primitive peoples, she is primarily an economic associate, a provider of food, a laborer, and thus the chief source of wealth. In pastoral and higher agricultural civilization, her only sexual value is left. This sexual value consists in her attractiveness. In her function as an instrument of pleasure, the beauty of idle women is cultivated, and they are gathered together in large harems. Settled agricultural civilization bestows upon women a new function and a new sexual value, that of legitimate wife and mother of legitimate heirs to property. The contrast, which we have noted, between pastoral and purely agricultural societies is thus accentuated. Pastoral property is readily subdivided and multiplies. The importance of transmitting undivided to one or a few heirs is not pressing. Essentially pastoral peoples, such as the Semites and the Aryas of Asia, have in general retained their pastoral traditions with extreme conservatism, yet even here the acquisition of other forms of property has tended to reduce the extent of polygyny. In India, in like manner, polygamy has tended to become restricted. Modern economic conditions, together with the pressure of European opinion, are converting the polygamous institutions of the East into virtual monogamy. Ooh. And the next section is on the collapse of polygamy and its decay among the you-know-whos. Oh, yes. And it reminds, you-know-whos, it reminds of whos. And so, that's from the mothers from the chapter Social Evolution of Monogamic Marriage. And that's I was like walking through a bunch of students and like I'm reading this and it's just, and I'm just like hitting, I'm just like, what? Just stopping cold, like, what, mind blown, what the fuck? But it was, so as you could see, I highly recommend. If only there was somebody out there who could republish this, the unabridged version, it would be awesome. But we'll see. All right, later.